Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Night Watch by Terry Pratchett, Part 5. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Vimes found a cold cup of tea by his bed and a pile of clothes and armor on the floor outside the door. He drank the tea while he inspected the pile. He'd read Snouty right. The man survived because he was a weathercock and kept an eye on which way the wind was blowing. And right now the wind was blowing due Vimes. He'd even included fresh socks and drawers, which hadn't been in the specification. It was a thoughtful touch. They probably hadn't been paid for, of course. They had been obtained. This was the old night watch. But, glory be, the breathy little crawler had scrounged something else too. The 3 stripes for a sergeant had a little gold crown above them. Vimes instinctively disliked crowns, but this was one he was prepared to treasure. He went downstairs, doing up his belt, and bumped into Lorne, coming out of his surgery, wiping his hands on a cloth. The doctor smiled absently, then focused on the uniform. The smile did not so much fade as drain. "Shocked?" said Vimes. "Surprised," said the doctor. "Rosie won't be, I expect. I don't do anything illegal, you know." "Then you've got nothing to fear," said Vimes. "Really? That proves you're not from round here," said Lorne. "Want some breakfast? There's kidneys." This time it was Vimes's smile that drained. "Lamb," the doctor added. In the tiny kitchen, he prized the lid off a tall stone jar and pulled out a can. Vapor poured off it. "Ice," he said. Get it from over the road. Keeps food fresh." Vimes's brow wrinkled. "Over the road? You mean the mortuary?" "Don't worry, it's not been used," said Lorne, putting a pan on the stove. "Mr. Garnish drops off a lump a few times a week in payment for being cured of a rather similar medical condition. But mostly you work for the ladies of, shall we say, negotiable affection," said Vimes. Lorne gave him a sharp look to see if he was joking, but Vimes's expression hadn't changed. "Not just them," he said. "There are others." "People who come in by the back door," said Vimes, looking around the little room. "People who, for one reason or another, don't want to go to the better-known doctors." "Or can't afford them," said Lorne. "People who turn up with no identity. And you've had a point. John?" No, just asking," said Vimes, cursing himself for walking right into it. "I just wondered where you trained." "Why?" "The kind of people who come in by the back door are the kind of people who want results, I imagine." "Ha! Well, I trained in Clutch. They have some novel ideas about medicine over there. They think it's a good idea to get patients better, for one thing." He turned over the kidneys with a fork. "Frankly, Sergeant, I'm pretty much like you. We do what needs doing. We work in unpopular areas, and I suspect we both draw the line somewhere. I'm no butcher. Rosie says you aren't. But you do the job that's in front of you, or people die." "I'll remember that," said Vimes. "And when all's said and done," said Lorne, "there are worse things to do in the world than take the pulse of women." After breakfast, Sergeant-at-Arms John Keel stepped out into the first day of the rest of his life. He stood still for a moment, shut his eyes, and swiveled both feet like a man trying to stub out 2 cigarettes at once. A slow, broad smile spread across his face. Snouty had found just the right kind of boots. Willikins and Sybil, between them, conspired to prevent him wearing old, well-worn boots those days, and stole them away in the night to have the soles repaired. It was good to feel the streets with dry feet again, and after a lifetime of walking them, he did feel the streets. There were the cobblestones, cat heads, troll heads, loaves, short and long sets, rounders, Morpork sixes, and the 87 types of paving brick, and the 14 types of stone slab, and the 12 types of stone never intended for street slabs, which had got used to anyway, and had their own patterns of wear, and the rubbles and the gravels and the repairs, and the 13 different types of cellar cover, and 20 types of drain lid. He bounced a little, like a man testing the hardness of something. Elm Street, he said. He bounced again. Junction with Twinkle. Yeah, he was back. It wasn't many steps to Treacle Mine Road, and as he turned towards the watch house, a flash of colour caught his eye. And there it was, overhanging a garden wall. Lilac was common in the city. It was vigorous and hard to kill, and had to be. The flower buds were noticeably swelling. He stood and stared, as a man might stare at an old battlefield. They rise, hands up, hands up, hands up. How did it go now? Think of things happening one after the other. Don't assume that you know what's going to happen, because it might not. Be yourself. And because he was himself, he made a few little purchases in little shops and dark alleys, and went to work. The Treacle Mine Road night watch house was generally deserted around midday, but Vimes knew that Snouty, at least, would be there. He was a persistent floater, just like Nobby and Cullen and Carrot, and when you got down to it, Vimes as well. Being on duty was their default state of being. They hung around the watch house even when off duty, because that's where their lives took place. Being a copper wasn't something you left hanging by the door when you went home. But I promise, I'll learn how, thought Vimes. When I get back, it'll all be different. He went around the back and let himself in by the stable entrance. It wasn't even locked. Black mark right there, lads. The iron bulk of the hurry-up wagon stood empty on the cobbles. Behind it was what they called now the stables. In fact, the stables were only the bottom floor of what would have been part of Ankh-Morpork's industrial heritage, if anyone had ever thought of it like that. In practice, they thought of it as junk that was too heavy to cart away. It was part of the winding gear from a treacle mine, long since abandoned. One of the original lifting buckets was still up there, glued to the floor by its last load of the heavy, sticky, unrefined treacle, which one set was tougher than cement and more waterproof than tar. Vimes remembered, as a kid, begging chippings of pig treacle off the miners, one lump of that oozing the sweetness of prehistoric sugarcane could keep a boy's mouth happily shut for a week. Footnote 6. In the same way that ancient forests become coal, ancient swaths of natural sugarcane can become under the pressure of millennia, what in various parts of the disc is known as hokey pokey, pig treacle, or rock molasses. But much boiling and purification was necessary to create the thick golden syrup that was the city dwellers' honey. In these days, Ankh-Morpork supplies come from the more accessible toffee beds near Quirm. End footnote 6. Inside the treacle-roofed stable level, chewing a bit of bad hay, was the horse. Vimes knew it was a horse because it checked out as one. 4 hooves, tail, head with mane, seedy brown coat. Considered from another angle, it was half a ton of bones held together with horsehair. He patted it gingerly. As one of nature's pedestrians, he'd never been at home around horses. He unhooked a greasy clipboard from a nail nearby and flicked through its pages. Then he had another look around the yard. Tilden never did that. He looked at the pigsty in the corner where Nock kept his pig, and then at the kitchen, and then at the chicken run, and the pigeon loft, and the badly made rabbit hutches, and he did a few calculations. The old watch house. It was all there, just like the day he first arrived. It had been 2 houses once, and one of them had been the treacle mine office. Everywhere in the city had been something else once, and so the place was a maze of blocked-in doorways and ancient windows and pokey rooms. He wandered around like a man in a museum. See the old helmet on a stick for archery practice. See Sergeant Nock's broken springed armchair where he used to sit out on sunny afternoons. And inside, the smell. Floor wax, stale sweat, armor polish, unwashed clothes, ink, a hint of fried fish, and always, here, a taint of treacle. The night watch. He was back. Treacle. Molasses. A blend of molasses, invert sugar, and corn syrup used as syrup. Treacle. When the first members of the night watch came in, they found a man perfectly at ease, leaning back in a chair with his feet on a desk and leafing through paperwork. The man had sergeant's stripes and an air of an unsprung trap. He was also giving absolutely no attention to the newcomers. He particularly paid no heed to one gangly lance constable who was still new enough to have tried to put a shine on his breastplate. They fanned out among the desk with muttered conversations. Vimes knew them in his soul. They were in the night watch because they were too scruffy, ugly, incompetent, awkwardly shaped, or bloody-minded for the day watch. They were honest in that special policeman sense of the word. That is, they didn't steal things too heavy to carry, and they had the morale of damp gingerbread. He wondered last night about giving them some kind of pep talk by way of introduction, and decided against it. They might be very bad at it, but they were coppers, and coppers did not respond well to the happy family's approach. "Hello, chaps. Call me Christopher. My door is always open. I'm sure if we all pull together, we shall get along splendidly like one big happy family." They'd seen too many families to fall for that rubbish. Someone cleared their throat with malice, a forethought. Vimes glanced up and into the face of Sergeant Knock, and for a fraction of a second, had to suppress the urge to salute. Then he remembered what knock was. "Well," he said. "That's my desk you're sitting at, Sergeant," said Knock. Vimes sighed and pointed to the little crown on his sleeve. "See this, Sergeant," he said. "It's what they used to call the Hat of Authority." Knock's little weaselly eyes focused on the crown, and then they went back to Vimes's face and widened in the shock of recognition. "Bloody hell," breathed Knock. "That's bloody hell, sir," said Vimes. "But Sarge will do, most of the time. And this is your mob, is it? Oh dear. Well, let's make a start." He swung his feet off the desk and stood up. "I've been looking at the feed bills for Marilyn," he said. "Interesting reading, lads. According to my rough calculations, a horse eating that much ought to be approximately spherical. Instead, she's so thin that with 2 sticks and some sheet music, I could give you a tune." Vimes put the papers down. "Don't think I don't know where the corn goes. I bet I know who's got the chickens and rabbits and pigeons," he said. "And the pig. I bet the captain thinks they get fat on leftovers." "Yeah, but," a voice began. Vimes's hand slammed on the desk. "You lot even starve the damn horse," he said. "That stops right now. So will a lot of other things. I know how it works, see? Mumping free beer and a donut. Well, that's part of being a copper. And who knows, there might even be a few greasy spoons in this town so happy to see a copper that they will spontaneously offer him a free nosh. Stranger things have happened. But nicking the oats from Marilyn, that stops now. And another thing. Says here that last night the hurry-up wagon had 8 passengers," he said. "2 of them I know about, 'cause one of them must have been me, and I met the other man. The cells are empty this morning. What happened to the other 6? Sergeant Knock?" The sergeant licked his lips nervously. "Dropped them off in Cable Street for questioning, of course," he said, "as per instruction." "Did you get a receipt?" "A what?" "Your men hauled in 6 people who were staying out late, and you handed them over to the unmentionables," said Vimes, with the calm that comes before a storm. "Did they sign for them? Do you even know their names?" "Orders is just to hand them over," said Knock, trying a little defiance. "Hand them over and come away." Vimes filed that for future reference and said, "Now, I didn't get taken there 'cause we had a bit of a misunderstanding. And as you can see, it was a bigger misunderstanding than you thought, because I'm not down in the tanty counting cockroaches, Knock. No, indeed." He took a few steps forward. "I am standing in front of you, Knock. Isn't that what I'm doing?" "Yes, Sarge," Knock muttered, pale with fear and fury. "Yes, Sarge," said Vimes. "But there was another man in the cells, and he's gone too. All I want to know is how much and who to. I don't want any looks of cherubic innocence. I don't want any, 'Don't know what you're talking about, sir.' I just want to know how much and who to." A cloud of red, resentful solidarity settled over the faces in front of him. But he didn't need telling. He could remember. Corporal Quirk always had a private income from bribes. He'd been like Nobby Nobbs without the latter's amiable incompetence. An efficient Nobby, in fact, and you could throw into the mix bullying and brown-nosing and a delight in small evils. Vimes's gaze fell on Quirk and stayed there. "I know you were on the wagon last night, Corporal," he said. "You and Lance Constable, Vimes, it says here." "Not worth worrying anyone if they look a decent sort," Quirk said. And he'd said, "How can we tell they're a decent sort, Corp?" "Well, see how much they can afford." "You mean we let 'em go if they're rich?" "Way of the world, lad. Way of the world. No reason why we shouldn't get our share, eh? Did you see his money bag? $5 should do it. 4 for me and 1 for you, 'cause you're learning. That's nearly 3 days' pay. It'll cheer up your old mum, no end. And where's the loser?" "But suppose he's nicked the money, Corp?" "Suppose the moon was made of cheese. Would you like a slice?" "I think it was $5, Corporal," said Vimes, and watched the man's lizard eyes flash towards the young Lance Constable. "No. The man in the cell talked," lied Vimes. "Told me I was an idiot not to buy my way out. So, Mr. Quirk, it's like this. They're crying out for good men in the day watch, but if you don't stand too close to the light, you might pass. Get along there right now." "Everybody does it," Quirk burst out. "It's perks." "Everybody?" said Vimes. He looked around at the squad. "Anyone else here take bribes?" His glare ran from face to face, causing most of the squad to do an immediate impression of the floorboard and ceiling Inspector's synchronized observation team. Only 3 members met his gaze. There was Lance Corporal Cullen, who could be a little slow. There was a certain Lance Constable whose face was a mask of terror. And there was a dark-haired, round-faced constable who seemed to be puzzled, as if he was trying to remember something, but who nevertheless stared back with the firm, steady gaze of the true liar. "Apparently not," said Vimes. Quirk's finger shot out and vibrated in the direction of the young Sam Vimes. "He shared it! He shared it!" he said. "You ask him!" Vimes felt the shock run round the squad. Quirk had just committed suicide. You hung together against officers, fair enough. But when the jig was up, you did not drop someone in the khaki. They laugh at the idea of a watchman's honor, but it did exist in a blackened, twisty way. You did not drop your mates in the khaki. And especially you did not do it to a wet behind-the-ears rookie who wouldn't know any better. Vimes turned, for the first time, to the young man he'd been avoiding. "Gods, was I ever that skinny?" he thought. "Did I ever have that much Adam's apple? Did I really try to polish rust?" The young man's eyes were almost back in his head, only the white showing. "Lance Constable Vimes, is it?" he said, quietly. "Yes, sir," said Sam hoarsely. "At ease, Lance Constable. Did you, in fact, take a share of the bribe?" "Yes, sir. $1, sir." "At the instigation of Corporal Quirk?" Sir? Did he offer it to you?" Vimes translated. Vimes watched his own agony. "You did not drop someone in the khaki." "All right," he said at last. "I'll talk to you later on." "Oh, you still here, Quirk? If you want to complain to the captain, that's fine by me. But if you don't get your stuff out of your locker in 10 minutes, I'll damn well charge you rent!" Quirk looked around for immoral support and found none. He'd gone too far. Besides, the watch could see a storm of khaki when it was right overhead and were in no mood to stick their necks out for something like Quirk. "I will," he said. "I will complain to the captain. You'll see. You'll see. I've got 4 years of good conduct, I have." "No, that was 4 years not found out," said Vimes. "Clear off." When Quirk's footsteps had died away, Vimes glared at the squad. "Good afternoon, lads. My name's John Keel," he said. "We bloody well better get along fine. Now shine up. Captain's inspection in 2 minutes. Off you go. Sergeant Knock, a word, please." The men dispersed hurriedly. Knock stepped forward, not quite managing to conceal his nervousness. After all, his immediate superior now was a man who, last night, he had kicked in the nadgers. People could hold a grudge about a thing like that, and he'd had time to think. "I'd just like to say, sir, about last night," he began. "I'm not bothered about last night," said Vimes. "You're not? Would you recommend Fred Cullen for corporal? I'd value your judgment." "You would?" "Certainly. He looks a solid lad." "He is? I mean, yes, he is. Very thorough," said Knock, relief rising off him like steam. "Doesn't rush into things. Wants to join one of the regiments." "Well, we'll give him a try while we've still got him. That means we'll need another lance corporal. Who was that lad next to Cullen?" "Coates, sir. Ned Coates. Bright lad. Sometimes thinks he knows better. But we were all like that, eh?" Vimes nodded. His expression completely failed to give away the fact that, as far as he was concerned, there were things clinging to the underside of high branches that knew better than Sergeant Knock. "A taste of responsibility might do him some good then," he said. Knock nodded, because at that point he would have agreed to absolutely anything. And his body language was saying, "We're all sergeants together, right? We're talking about sergeant-y things like sergeants do. We're not bothered about anyone being kicked in the nadgers, eh? Not us, 'cause we're sergeants." His eyes widened, and he saluted as Tilden entered the office. There was some half-hearted saluting among the squad too. The captain acknowledged them stiffly and looked nervously at Vimes. "Ah, Sergeant," he said. "Settling in?" "Yes, sir. No problems." "Well done. Carry on." When the man had disappeared up the creaking stairs, Vimes turned back to Knock. "Sergeant, we don't hand over prisoners without a receipt. Understand? Never. What happens to them afterwards? Do you know?" "They get questioned," said Knock. "We take some up there for questioning." "What kind of questions? How long it takes 2 men to dig half a hole?" "What?" Knock's brow knitted. "From now on, someone at Cable Street signs for prisoners or we bring them right back here," said Vimes. "It's bloody elementary, Sergeant. You hand them over, you get a docket. Don't you do that down at the Tanty?" "Well, yeah, obviously, but... well, Cable Street. I mean, you don't know what it's like here. I can see that. But with the unmentionables round at Cable Street, it's best not to." "Listen, I'm not telling you to kick the door down and shout, 'Put down those thumbscrews,'" said Vimes. "I'm telling you, we keep track of prisoners. When you arrest a man, you sign him over to Snouty, don't you? When he leaves, Snouty or the orderly man signs him out, doesn't he? It's basic custody discipline, man. So if you hand a prisoner over to Cable Street, someone there gives you a signature, understand? No one just disappears. Knox's face showed a man contemplating an immediate future that contained fewer opportunities for personal gain and a greatly raised risk of being shouted at. And just to make sure everyone understands, I'll ride the wagon tonight, said Vimes. But first, I'll take that lad Vimes out for a stroll and shake him up a bit. He could do with it, said Knock. Can't get his mind right. Good with his hands, but you have to tell him everything twice. Maybe I'll shout then, said Vimes. Vimes! Lance Constable Vimes shivered to attention. We're going to take a stroll, lad, said Vimes. Time you knew what's what. He nodded to Knock, took his younger self by the shoulder and marched out. What do you think, Sarge? Said Coates, coming up behind Knock as the sergeant glared at the departing back. He likes you, said Knock bitterly. Oh yes, apple of his eye you are. You're his old pal. You're being bumped up to Lance Corporal. Think he'll last? I'll give him a couple of weeks, said Knock. I've seen him like that before. Big men in little towns coming here thinking they're the bee's nose. We soon cut 'em down to size. What you think? Dunno, Sarge, said Coates, still thinking. Knows his coppering, mind you, said Knock. Bit too cocky, though. He'll learn. He'll learn. There's ways. We'll show him. Take him down a peg. Teach him how we do things around here. Vimes always preferred to walk by himself. And now there were two of him, walking by himself. It was a strange sensation, and gave him the impression that he was looking through a mask. No, not like that, he said. I always have to teach people to walk. You swing the foot, like this. Get it right and you can keep going all day. You're not in a hurry. You don't want to miss things. Yes, Sarge, said young Sam. It was called proceeding. Vimes proceeded along Treacle Mine Road and felt magnificent. Of course, there were lots of things to worry about, but right here and now, all he had to do was patrol, and it felt fine. Not much paperwork in the old watch. In fact, come to think of it, he'd probably doubled it. All he had to do right now was his duty, as he'd been taught it. He had nothing to do but be himself. Young Sam wasn't saying much. There was good sense. I see you've got a bell there, lad, said Vimes after a while. Yes, Sarge. Regulation bell? Yes, Sarge. Sergeant Knock gave it to me. I'll bet he did, thought Vimes. When we get back, just you swap it for someone else's. Doesn't matter whose. No one will say anything. Yes, Sarge. Vimes waited. Why, Sarge? A bell's a bell. Not that one, said Vimes. That's 3 times the weight of the normal bell. They give it to rookies to see what they do. Did you complain? No, Sarge. That's the way. Keep quiet and pass it on to some other sucker when we get back. That's the copper's way. Why did you come into the job, lad? My mate Iffy joined last year. He said you got free food and a uniform and you could pick up the extra $1 here and there. That'd be Iffy Scurrick, stationed over in the Dolly sisters' house then, said Vimes. And you've been picking up the odd $1, have you? They walked in silence for a moment. Then Sam said, Have I got to give that $1 back, Sarge? Are you worth $1? said Vimes. I gave it to our mum, Sarge. Did you tell her how you got it? I didn't want it, Sam blurted out. But Corporal Quirk said, was he worth listening to? Dunno, Sarge. You don't know. I bet your mum didn't bring you up to think like that, said Vimes. No, she bloody well didn't, he thought. She'd tan your hide, copper or not, if she knew it was a dodgy dollar. No, Sarge, but they're all at it, Sarge. I don't mean the lads, Sarge, but you only have to look round the city. Our rent's going up, taxes go up. There's these new taxes all the time, and it's all just cruel, Sarge. It's cruel. Winder sold us all to his mates, and that's a fact, sir. Said Vimes. Oh, yes, tax farming. What a clever invention. Good old Winder. He'd flogged the right to collect taxes to the highest bidders. What a great idea. Nearly as good as banning people from carrying weapons after dark, because A, you save the cost of tax collectors and the whole revenue system, B, you got a wagon load of cash up front, and C, the business of tax gathering then became the business of groups of powerful yet curiously reticent people who kept out of the light. However, they employed people who not only went out in the light but positively blocked it, and it was amazing what those people found to tax, up to and including looking at me, pal. What was it that veterinary had said once? Taxation is just a sophisticated way of demanding money with menaces. Well, tax farmers were very unsophisticated in the way they went about recouping their investment. He remembered these days. The city had never seemed poorer, but by the gods, there was a lot of tax being paid. Hard to explain to a kid like Sam why pouncing $1 when you got the chance was a bad thing to do. Put it like this, Lance Constable, as they turned the corner. Would you let a murderer off for $1,000? No, sir. $1,000 would set your mum up in a nice place in a good part of town, though. Knock it off, Sarge. I'm not like that. You were when you took that $1. Everything else is just a haggling over the price. They walked in sullen silence. Then, am I going to get the sack, Sarge? Said the Lance Constable. For $1? No. I'd just as soon be sacked, Sarge. Thanks all the same, said young Sam defiantly. Last Friday, we had to go and break up some meeting over near the university. They were just talking, and we had to take orders from some civilian, and the Cable Street lads were a bit rough, and it's not like the people had weapons or anything. You can't tell me that's right, Sarge. And then we loaded some of them into the hurry-up just for talking. Mrs. Owlesley's boy Ellison never came home the other night too. And they say he was dragged off to the palace just for saying his lordship's a loony. Now people down our street are looking at me in a funny way. Ye gods, I remember, thought Vimes. I thought it was all going to be chasing men who gave up after the length of a street and said, "It's a fair cop, governor." I thought I'd have a medal by the end of the week. You want to be careful what you say, lad, he said. Yeah, but our mum says it's fair enough if they take away the troublemakers and the weirdies, but it's not right them taking away ordinary people. Is this really me? Vimes thought. Do I really have the political awareness of a head louse? Anyway, he is a loony. Snapcase is the man we ought to have. And the self-preservation instincts of a lemming? Kid, here's some advice. in this town, right now, if you don't know who you're talking to, don't talk. Yes, but Snapcase says, listen, a copper doesn't keep flapping his lip. He doesn't let on what he knows. He doesn't say what he's thinking. No, he watches and listens and he learns and he bides his time. His mind works like mad, but his face is a blank. Until he's ready. Understand? All right, Sarge. Good. Can you use that sword you have there, lad? I did the training, yes. Fine. The training. Fine. So if we're attacked by a lot of sacks of straw hanging from a beam, I can rely on you? And until then, shut up. Keep your ears open and your eyes peeled and learn something. Snapcase is the man to save us, he thought gloomily. Yeah, I used to believe that. A lot of people did. Just because he rode around in an open carriage occasionally and called people over and talked to them. The level of the conversation being on the lines of, "So you're a carpenter, are you? Wonderful! What does that job entail?" Just because he said publicity. Just because he said publicly that perhaps taxes were a bit on the high side. Just because he waved. "You been here before, Sarge?" said Sam as they turned a corner. "Oh, everyone's visited Ankh-Morpork, lad," said Vimes jovially. "Only we're doing the Elm Street beat perfectly, Sarge, and I've been letting you lead the way." Damn, that was the kind of trouble your feet could get you into. A wizard once told Vimes that there were monsters up near the hub that were so big they had to have extra brains in their legs, 'cause they were too far away for one brain to think fast enough. And a beat copper grew brains in his feet. He really did. Elm Street, left into the pits, left again into the scours. It was the first beat he'd ever walked, and he could do it without thinking. He had done it without thinking. "I do my homework," he said. "Did you recognize Ned?" said Sam. Perhaps it was a good thing that he was leaving his feet to their own devices, because Vimes's brain suddenly filled with warning bells. "Ned," he said. "Only before you came he said he thought he remembered you from Sodopolis," said Sam, oblivious of the clamour. "He was in the day watch there before he came here 'cause of better promotion prospects. Big man, he said." "Can't say I recall him," said Vimes with care. "You're not all that big, Sarge." "Well, Ned was probably shorter in those days," said Vimes, while his thoughts shouted, "Shut up, kid." But the kid was, well, him, niggling at little details, tugging at things that didn't seem to fit right, being a copper, in fact. Probably he ought to feel proud of his younger self, but he didn't. "You're not me," he thought. "I don't think I was ever as young as you. If you're going to be me, it's going to take a lot of work. 30 damn years of being hammered on the anvil of life, you poor bastard. You've got it all to come." Back at the watch house, Vimes wandered idly over to the evidence and lost property cupboard. It had a big lock on it, which was not, however, ever locked. He soon found what he was looking for. An unpopular copper needed to think ahead, and he intended to be unpopular. Then he had a bite of supper and a mug of the thick brown cocoa on which the night watch ran, and took Sam out on the hurry-up wagon. He'd wondered how the watch was going to play it, and wasn't surprised to find they were using the old dodge of obeying orders to the letter with gleeful malignancy. At the first point he made, Lance Corporal Coates and Constable Waddy were waiting with 4 sullen or protesting insomniacs. "4, sir," said Coates, ripping off a textbook salute. "All we've apprehended, sir. All written down on this chitty, what I am giving to you at this moment in time, sir." "Well done, Lance Corporal," said Vimes, dryly, taking the paperwork, signing one copy and handing it back. "You may have a half-holiday at Hogswatch, and give my regards to your granny. Help 'em in with them, Sam." "We usually only get 4 or 5 on a round, sir," Sam whispered as they pulled away. "What'll we do?" "Make several journeys," said Vimes. "But the lads were taking the Michael, sir. They were laughing." "It's past curfew," said Vimes. "That's the law." Corporal Cullen and Constable Wiglet were waiting at their post with 3 miscreants. One of them was Miss Palm. Vimes gave Sam the reins and jumped down to open the back of the wagon and fold down the steps. "Sorry to see you here, miss," he said. "Apparently, some new sergeant's been throwing his weight around," said Rosie Palm in a voice of solid ice. She refused his hand haughtily and climbed up into the wagon. Vimes realized that one of the other detainees was a woman too. She was shorter than Rosie and was giving him a look of pure bantam defiance. She was also holding a huge quilted work basket. Out of reflex, Vimes took it to help her up the steps. "Sorry about this, miss," he began. "Get your hands off that!" She snatched the basket back and scrambled into the darkness. "Pardon me," said Vimes. This is Miss Batty," said Rosie from the bench inside the wagon. "She's a seamstress." "Well, I assumed she—" "A seamstress, I said Miss Palm, "with needles and thread. Also specialises in crochet. In crochet." Is that a kind of extra?" Vimes began. "It's a type of knitting," said Miss Batty from the darkness of the wagon. "Fancy you not knowing that?" "You mean she's a real—" said Vimes, but Rosie slammed the iron door. "You just drive us on," she said, "and when I see you again, John Keel, we are going to have words." There was some sniggering from the shadows inside the wagon, and then a yelp. It had been immediately preceded by the noise of a spiky heel being driven into an instep. Vimes signed the grubby form presented to him by Fred Cullen and handed it back with a solid, fixed expression that made the man feel rather worried. "Where to now, Sarge?" said Sam as they pulled away. "Cable Street," said Vimes. There was a murmur of dismay from the crated people behind them. "That's not right," muttered Sam. "We're playing this by the rules," said Vimes. "You're going to have to learn why we have rules, Lance Constable. And don't you eyeball me. I've been eyeballed by experts, and you look as if you're desperate for the privy." "Yeah, all right, but everyone knows they torture people," mumbled Sam. "Do they?" said Vimes. "Then why doesn't anyone do anything about it?" "'Cause they torture people." At least I was getting a grasp of basic social dynamics, thought Vimes. Sullen silence reigned in the seat beside him as the wagon rumbled through the streets. But he was aware of whispering behind him, slightly louder than the background. He heard Rosie Palm's voice hiss, "He won't, I'll bet anything." A few seconds later, a male voice, slightly the worse for drink and very much the worse for bladder-twisting dread, managed, "Sergeant, we, believe the fine is $5. "I don't think it is, sir," said Vimes, keeping his eyes on the damp streets. There was some more frantic whispering, and then the voice said, I have a very nice gold ring. Glad to hear it, sir, said Vimes. Everyone should have something nice. He patted his pocket for his silver cigar case, and for a moment felt more anger than despair, and more sorrow than anger. There was a future. There had to be. He remembered it. But it only existed as that memory, and that was fragile as the reflection on a soap bubble, and maybe just as easily popped. I could perhaps include... If you try to offer me a bribe one more time, sir, said Vimes as the wagon turned into Cable Street, I shall personally give you a thumping. Be told. Perhaps there is some other, Rosie Pond began as the lights of the Cable Street house came into view. We're not at home to a tuppenny upright either, said Vimes, and heard the gasp. Shut up, the lot of you! He reined Marilyn to a halt, jumped down and pulled his clipboard from under the seat. 7 of you, he said to the guard, lounging against the door. Well, said the guard, open it up and let's be having them then. Right, said Vimes, flicking through the paperwork. No problem. He thrust the clipboard forward. Just sign here. The man recoiled as though Vimes had tried to offer him a snake. What do you mean, sign? He said. Hand 'em over. You sign, said Vimes woodenly. That's the rules. Prisoners move from one custody to another. You have to sign. More than my job's worth, not to get a signature. Your job's not worth spit, snarled the man, grabbing the board. He looked at it blankly, and Vimes handed him a pencil. If you need any help with the difficult letters, let me know, he said helpfully. Growling, the guard scrawled something on the paper and thrust it back. Now open up! Please, he said. Certainly, said Vimes, glancing at the paper. But now I'd like to see some form of ID, thank you. What? It's not me, you understand, said Vimes. But if I went back and showed my captain this piece of paper and he said to me, Keel, how do you know he's Henry the Hamster? Well, I'd be a bit flummoxed, maybe even perplexed. Listen, we don't sign for prisoners. We do, Henry, said Vimes. No signature, no prisoners. And you'll stop us taking him, will you? Said Henry the Hamster, taking a few steps forward. You lay a hand on that door, said Vimes, and I'll... Chop it off, will you? I'll arrest you, said Vimes. Obstruction would be a good start, but we can probably think of some more charges back at the station. Arrest me? But I'm a copper, same as you. Wrong again, said Vimes. What is the trouble here? Said a voice. A small, thin figure appeared in the torchlight. Henry the Hamster took a step back and adopted a certain deferential pose. Officer won't hand over the curfew breakers, sir, he said. And this is the officer, said the figure, lurching towards Vimes with a curiously erratic gait. Yes, sir. Vimes found himself under cool and not openly hostile inspection from a pale man with the screwed-up eyes of a pet rat. Ah, said the man, opening a little tin and taking out a green throat pastille. Would you be Keel, by any chance? I have been hearing about you. The man's voice was as uncertain as his walk. Pauses turned up in the wrong places. You hear about things quickly, sir. A salute is generally in order, Sergeant. I don't see anything to salute, sir, said Vimes. Good point, good point. You are new, of course. But, you see, we in the particulars... often find it necessary to wear plain clothes, like rubber aprons, if I recall correctly, thought Vimes. Aloud he said, "Yes, sir." It was a good phrase. It could mean any of a dozen things or nothing at all. It was just punctuation until the man said something else. "I'm Captain Swing," said the man. "Find thee, Swing. If you think the name is amusing, please smirk and get it over with. You may now salute." Vimes saluted. Swing's mouth turned up at the corners very briefly. "Good. Your first night on our hurry-up wagon, Sergeant?" "Sir." "And you're here so early, with a full load too. Shall we take a look at your passengers?" He glanced in between the ironwork. "Ah, yes. Good evening, Miss Palm. And an associate, I see." "I do crochet!" "And what appear to be some party-goers. Well, well." Swing stood back. "What little scamps your street officers are, to be sure. They really have scoured the streets. How they love their little jokes, Sergeant." Swing put his hand on the wagon doors. Swing put his hand on the wagon doors' handle, and there was a little noise which was nevertheless a thunderclap in the silence, and it was the sound of a sword moving very slightly in its scabbard. Swing stood stock still for a moment, and then delicately popped the pastille into his mouth. "Ah, I think that perhaps this little catch can be thrown back, don't you, Sergeant? We don't want to make a mockery of the law. Take them away. Take them away." "Yes, sir." "But just one moment, please, Sergeant. Indulge me. Just a little hobby of mine." "Sir?" Swing had reached into a pocket of his overlong coat and pulled out a very large pair of steel calipers. Vimes flinched as they were opened up to measure the width of his head, the width of his nose, and the length of his eyebrows. Then a metal ruler was pressed against one ear. While doing this, Swing was mumbling under his breath. Then he collapsed the calipers with a snap and slipped them back. "I must congratulate you, Sergeant," he said, "in overcoming your considerable natural disadvantages. Do you know you have the eye of a mass murderer? I am never wrong in these matters." "No, sir. Didn't know that, sir. We'll try to keep it close, sir," said Vimes. Swing didn't crack a smile. "However, I'm sure that when you have settled in, you and Corporal Hamster here will get along like a house on fire." "A house on fire? Yes, sir." "Don't let me detain you, Sergeant Keel." Vimes saluted. Swing nodded, turned in one movement, and as though he was on a swivel, and strode back into the watchhouse. Or jerked, Vimes considered. The man moved in the same way he talked, in a curious mixture of speeds. It was as if he was powered by springs. When he moved a hand, the first few inches of movement were a blur. Then it gently coasted until it was brought into conjunction with whatever was the intended target. Sentences came out in spurts and pauses. There was no rhythm to the man. Vimes ignored the fuming corporal and climbed back onto the wagon. Turn us round, Lance Constable," he said. "Good night, Henry." Sam waited until the wheels were rumbling over the cobbles before he turned wide-eyed to Vimes. "You were going to draw on him, weren't you?" he said. "You were, Sarge, weren't you?" "You just keep your eyes on the road, Lance Constable." "But that was Captain Swing, that was. And when you told that man to prove he was Henry the Hamster, I thought we'd choke. You knew they weren't going to sign, right, Sarge? 'Cause if there's a bit of paper saying they've got someone, then if anyone wants to find out, just drive, Lance Constable. But the boy was right. For some reason, the unmentionables both loved and feared paperwork. They certainly generated a lot of it. They wrote everything down. They didn't like appearing on other people's paperwork, though. That worried them. I can't believe we got away with it, Sarge. We probably haven't, Vimes thought. But Swing has enough to worry him at the moment. He doesn't care very much about a big, stupid sergeant. He turned and banged on the ironwork. Sorry for the inconvenience, ladies and gentlemen, but it appears the unmentionables are not doing business tonight. Looks like we'll have to do the interrogation ourselves. We're not very experienced at this, so I hope we don't get it wrong. Now, listen carefully. Are any of you serious conspirators bent on the overthrow of the government? There was a stunned silence from within the wagon. Come on, said Vimes. I haven't got all night. Does anyone want to overthrow Lord Winder by force? Well, no, said the voice of Miss Palm. Or by crochet? I heard that, said another female voice sharply. No one? Shame, said Vimes. Well, that's good enough for me. Lance Constable, is it good enough for you? Yes, Sarge. In that case, we'll drop you all off on our way home, and my charming assistant, Lance Constable Vimes, will take, $50 off each of you for travelling expenses, for which you will get a receipt. Thank you for travelling with us, and we hope you will consider the hurry-up wagon in all your future curfew-breaking arrangements. Vimes could hear shocked whispering behind him. This was not how things were supposed to go these days. Sarge, said Lance Constable Vimes. Yep. Have you really got the eye of a mass murderer? In the pocket of my other suit, yes. Ha! Sam was quiet for a while, and when he spoke again he seemed to have something new on his mind. Sarge? Yes, lad. What's a tuppenny upright, Sarge? It's a kind of jam donut, lad. Did your mum ever make 'em? Yes, Sarge. Sarge? Yes, lad. I think it probably means something else as well, Sarge, said Sam, sniggering. Something a bit rude. The whole of life is a learning process, Lance Constable. They got the wagon back to the yard 10 minutes later, and by that time Vimes knew that a new rumour was fanning out across the city. Young Sam had already whispered things to the other officers as the curfew breakers were dropped off, and nobody gossips like a copper. They didn't like the unmentionables. Like petty criminals everywhere, the watchmen prided themselves that there were some depths to which they would not sink. There had to be some things below you, even if it was only mudworms. Rosie Palm bolted the door of her flat, leaned on it and stared at Sandra. What is he? Said Sandra, dumping her work basket on the table. It clanked within. Clank. Is he on our side? You heard the lads, snapped Rosie. No bribes now. And then he drags us off to Swing's bastards, and then he won't hand us over? I could kill him. I rescued him from the gutter, got Mossy to patch him up, and suddenly he's playing big silly games. Yes, what is it to penny upright? Said Sandra brightly. Miss Palm paused. She quite enjoyed Sandra's company, and the extra rent certainly came in handy, but there were times she wondered whether A, she should have a talk with the girl, or B, she was being very gently wound up. She suspected the latter, since Sandra was taking more money than her most of the time. It was getting embarrassing. "It's a kind of jam donut. It's a kind of jam donut," she said. "Now you'd better go and hide thee." Someone knocked on the door behind her. She motioned Sandra through the bead curtain, took a moment to pull herself together, and opened the door a fraction. There was a very small old man standing in the hall. Everything about him sloped hopelessly downwards. His grey moustache could have been stolen from a walrus or a bloodhound that had just been given some very bad news. His shoulders sagged listlessly. Even parts of his face seemed to be losing the battle with gravity. He held his cap in his hands and was twisting it nervously. "Yes?" said Rosie.
It said seamstress on the sign," the old man mumbled. "And, well, since my old woman died, you know, what with one thing and another, never been any good at doing it for myself."
He gave Rosie a look of sheer, helpless embarrassment. She glanced down at the sack by his feet and picked it up. It was full of very clean but very worn socks. Every single one had holes in the heel and toe. "Sandra," she said, "I think this one's for you."